everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm your host, Demetris. And for today's episode, I'll be speaking about abortions, the history of abortions in America, and also the states that have banned abortions in America. So I'm going to get into the history of abortions in America. So it all started in 1847 when doctors came together and decided to form the AMA, which is known as the American Medical Association. And this led to men having full control on medical practices. The AMA, also known as American Medical Association, studied the reproductive health care workers, such as the nurses and the midwives, and the obstetric services that they were doing. So, just in case anybody don't know what obstetric services is, it's where the nurses and midwives were caring for the women after conception, during their pregnancy, and also during childbirth. So, the male doctors that formed the American Medical Association decided to terminate all the midwives and nurses because they believe they should have the power to decide when an abortion could be performed. But the issue with this is that the American Medical Association was composed of physicians who lacked experience in pregnancy and reproductive health. So, in that same year, 1847, the state legislators decided to make a law to ban abortions. So in 1880s, restricting a woman from having abortion became the new norm. And all states had laws to restrict abortions unless a doctor said the abortion was needed to save the life of the patient or for therapeutic reasons. By 1910, abortions in America was no longer restricted but illegal. It was illegal for any woman to try to have an abortion in any state and also in any stage of her pregnancy. Now, however, like I said, there were some exceptions. So, in this case as well, the only exception was to save a woman's life. And that decision had to be made by doctors who were 95% were men. But also around this time, America was experiencing a big increase in immigration. And so the white men did not want to lose their control. So the white men in power supported abortion bans. And the reason why they did this was to get the upper class white women to have more children. So in 1930, because abortions were banned in America, a lot of women were having abortions illegally. Because women were having illegal and unsafe abortions, this caused the maternal mortality rate to go sky high. There were nearly 2,700 women in 1930 that have passed away due to unsafe and illegal abortions. Almost one out of every five, which is 18% of maternal deaths, were recorded that year. So it hit the headlines that a lot of women were passing away due to unsafe and illegal abortions. So in 1955, Planned Parenthood held a first of its kind conference to speak on the issue of abortions. And a lot of doctors attended this conference. And they decided to publicly state that the abortion law should be reformed. Also, a lot of other people that attended said that laws should be rewritten to allow doctors more independence to provide abortion services, which can improve public health and access to reproductive health care for people of all economic circumstances. In 1962, a lot of pregnant women started to use the drug known as thalidomide. The drug was used to help ease the pregnant women's symptoms. Now, however, women found out that the drug actually caused a severe birth defect. In the same year, a pregnant TV host took the drug thalidomide because abortions in America was not legal. So she decided to actually have an abortion in Sweden. And 52% of people in America supported her. Due to the outcome of women taking the drug thalidomide, this grew even a bigger support for the abortion law to be reformed. So, 2 years later, in 1964, abortion law reform activists registered their first national group called the Association for the Study of Abortion, also known as ASA. So, the Planned Parenthood also joined doctors and the members that were leading the Association for the Study of Abortion and advocating for abortion laws to be reformed, and also for studies that would assist abortion procedure safety. So the Association for the Study of Abortion had a plan to increase the abortion access. And to do that, they advocated only for medically necessary abortions. But members of the larger abortion law reform movement wanted abortions to be legalized for all people. So fast forward to 1966, where non-doctors were sued in California for performing abortions on women who had been exposed to rubella, which is a disease that is known to cause birth defects. Now, there were doctors across America that came to defend the non doctors in California. And this was known to be the trial of the San Francisco Nine. And doctors also defended the deans of 128 medical schools. And due to this trial, this resulted in one of the first abortion reform acts in America. The state California revised its ban on abortion to allow hospital committees to approve requests for abortions. In 1969, the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, also known as NARAL, was established in Chicago at the first national conference on abortion laws. In the late 1960s, a national effort was going on to reform abortion laws in every state. Advocates, clergy members, healthcare providers, and legal community tried to persuade state legislators and went to court to overturn statutes that have been in place since before the turn of the century. Between 1967 and 1973, four states, New York, Alaska, Washington, and Hawaii, repealed their abortion bans entirely, while 13 other states enacted reforms that increased the exceptions of having an abortion. So instead of allowing women to have the rights to have abortion, they only allowed it if the pregnancy resulted from rape or incest, or if the pregnancy was dangerous for the patient physical or mental health, or fatal abnormalities. So finally in 1970, New York decided to legalize abortions. After they passed that law, a Planned Parenthood health center in Syracuse became the first Planned Parenthood health center to provide abortion services and the first freestanding abortion center nationwide. Now, in the first 2 years after New York legalized abortions, two-thirds of the abortions performed in the state were on patients who had traveled from other states, which in those other states, abortions were still banned. Now, at the time, other states that had legalized abortions had a requirement for the patients to be a state resident. So in 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution protects the right to abortion, which the 14th Amendment is saying that you are granted citizenship to everyone that was born or naturalized in America. No state shall make or enforce any law that shortens the privileges or immunities of citizens in the U.S. Then the Supreme Court realized for the first time that the constitutional right to privacy is large enough to bound a woman's decision whether or not she could have abortion or not. So the Roe versus Wade protected the rights to have abortion in all states of America, making abortion services safer and more accessible in America. So then the Hyde Amendment was put into place in 1976. So just in case anyone don't know, the Hyde Amendment is a discriminatory and racist policy that prevents federal dollars from being used in government insurance programs like Medicaid for abortion services, except for when a woman gets pregnant from incest or rape, or if there's life threatening risk to the pregnant woman. This bill was created by Representative Henry Hyde, and he said, I quote, I would certainly like to prevent, if I could legally, anybody having an abortion, a rich woman, a middle class woman, or a poor woman. Unfortunately, the only vehicle available is the Medicaid bill. Now, due to systematic racism, Medicaid disproportionately serves the Latino, LGBTQ plus, and Black communities. Even though the bill was created, 16 states currently already included abortion in the Medicaid programs using state funds. Now, however, 34 states and the District of Columbia did not have abortion coverage in their Medicaid programs due to the Hyde Amendment. Now, due to a large part to the advocacy of reproductive justice organizations, in 2021, the Biden Harris administration became the first administration in decades to disbar the Hyde Amendment from its presidential budget. So, laws that was created to keep women from having abortions just kept getting added on. So, in 1984, the global gag rule was passed by President Ronald Reagan, also known as the Mexico City policy. So the global gag rule prevented foreign organizations that received American health aid from providing information on and referral for abortions or advocating for abortion access. Now, ever since Ronald Reagan, there were some presidents that supported abortions and had repealed the global gang rule, while other presidents had reinstated it. This includes President Donald Trump, who not only did he reinstated the bill, but he extended the global gang rule to make it even more harmful. So in 1992, there's another case called Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. Now, this case claimed that the Constitution protects the rights to abortion, but Casey created an undue burden framework, which means the laws restricting access to abortion would be judged. Now, this framework made it more difficult to challenge the laws that were more on the pro abortion side. And because of the framework, there were things that were required to show that a law has the purpose or effect of placing a substantial obstacle in the path of a patient seeking a abortion. Ever since the Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. Politicians passed numerous medically unnecessary abortion restrictions in the U.S., which courts have found that did not force a undue burden. In 2007, another case took place called Gonzalez versus Carhart and Gonzalez versus Planned Parenthood Federation of America. The Supreme Court justified the first federal legislation to criminalize abortions, allowing Congress to ban second trimester abortion procedures. And this is the issue to ban women being pregnant, especially in their second trimester, because if women wanted to have an abortion in their second trimester, well, the second trimester is actually the safest and best way to protect a woman's health. And because the legislation did not contain a exception for the patient's health, the Supreme Court overruled a key component of Roe versus Wade that the patient's health must be of paramount concern in laws that restrict abortion access. Another case took place in 2016 named Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstedt. The Supreme Court ruled that two Texas abortion restrictions were unconstitutional because they would shut down most abortion providers in the state and force a undue burden on access to safe and legal abortions in Texas. There is another case that occurred on June the 29th in 2020, June Medical Services versus Russo. The Supreme Court struck down a medically unnecessary law that was identical to the one it had struck down in Whole Woman's Health. This law would have made abortion virtually inaccessible in Louisiana. So the latest law that has been passed was on September the 1st of 2021 in Texas when they enforced a dangerous law called SB 8. And what it means is that it bans abortions at approximately 6 weeks of pregnancy. And this law is a big issue for women because a lot of women don't even know they're pregnant before 6 weeks. And the American Medical Association criticized the Texas abortion ban, but the Supreme Court allowed it to take effect. So on December the 1st of 2021, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, a case about a Mississippi ban on abortions at 15 weeks. Now, the Mississippi state asked the Supreme Court to allow a pre-viability, which means that not considered sufficiently developed to survive outside the uterus. But also, they asked the Supreme Court to overrule the Roe versus Wade and the Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. So the Supreme Court finally made a decision on the Dawes versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, and they decided to eliminate the constitutional right to have abortions in America. So almost 24 states in America have banned or limit access for women to have an abortion procedure. Now, however, the states that have limited access to the abortions have a higher rate of maternal and infant mortality and also a higher rate of economic insecurity. But there's also going to be a case where they are going to talk about the abortion pill. That's supposed to be spoken about later on this month. But also in April, they're supposed to hear a challenge in Idaho about a near total ban on abortions. Even though all this was said, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin announced that they will still resume abortion care services after a judge ruled that a law back from 1849 clarified that an abortion ban did not apply to abortion procedures. Also, the Supreme Court in South Carolina approved a law banning abortions when the fetus heartbeat can be detected. The fetus heartbeat can be detected as early as 6 weeks during a pregnancy. Now I'm going to list the states that have completely banned abortions with no exceptions, even for rape or incest. These states are Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Texas. Now, like I said, Idaho, they have a near total ban in place, but the hearing is not going to be done until later on this month. Indiana has an abortion ban with limited exceptions. Now, the Indiana Supreme Court certified a ruling that outlaws nearly all abortions in the state and even denied a petition for a rehearing. So, Mississippi has a near total ban in place, and this includes exception for rape, but not for incest. Now, North Dakota has an abortion ban with exceptions for rape or incest in the first 6 weeks, though, of a pregnancy. Now, West Virginia has a near total ban in place. Now, the federal judge ruled in last August that the state can also restrict the sales of abortion pills. Also, Arizona has a 15-week ban that went into effect last year in September, but it is legal when a woman is 6 to 18 weeks pregnant. So I'm going to give my input on all this. And I just want to say that I'm sick and tired of this. I'm sick and tired of people trying to control women and tell us what we can and cannot do with our own bodies. And the fact that in a lot of these states, they're saying that you cannot have abortion even if you was raped. Excuse you? Like, first of all, hold on. Who do y'all think y'all are trying to tell us when we can and cannot abort a child? Who in the world do they think they are? This is my body. I'm sick and tired of people always trying to control a woman. If you look at the history in America, they always tried to control a woman, but not ever a man unless he was black. But look at laws that have been in place and see if they have ever targeted white men. They have not. But if you look at other laws, they have always targeted other men, and especially black men. But if you look at the women, it affects all women. And that is the issue that I have, is that it's always men trying to control a woman. I have an issue with it. I'm so irritated with it because I'm like, first of all, y'all can't even carry kids. The fact that those male doctors stood there and kicked all the midwives out and wanted to tell them they can't do this no more. Who do you think you are? It was all about control. And I'm like, why are y'all always trying to control a woman? And all it is that they want us to have more kids to rely on the government. That's all it is. They just want us to have more kids. And I'm like, I'm sick and tired of it. Y'all do not carry kids. Y'all don't even have eggs, for crying out loud. If you are not a woman, you shouldn't even put your input on this because there are so many women out here that have complications when they're pregnant. There are so many. You have women out here that lose their lives just by being pregnant. So the fact that we as women go through this, but then you have these ding dong men over here that don't know nothing about the woman's body, the reproductive system. They don't know nothing about it. But yeah, you want to tell us you can't have abortion. Carry a child, then talk. But they can't because they don't have eggs. They have sperm. And that's the issue that I have. You're not a woman, so you need to be quiet. the stuff that a lot of women go through, the morning sickness, the contractions, with the labor, whether it's a C-section or they doing it the vagina way, it doesn't matter. A lot of women have so many complications during their pregnancy. We have to go through all this. And for a lot of these people to say you cannot abort a child, I'm not okay with that. I'm just sick and tired of it because what's going to happen is a lot of women are going to start hurting themselves. A lot of them are going to start hurting themselves or committing suicide because depending on the state they in, they cannot have an abortion or they're going to go to a different state or some of them even go out of the country to have an abortion. But who can afford that with this inflation? So this is just annoying. It is annoying. I'm sick and tired of it. I mean, honestly, I feel like this shouldn't even be a topic that we should still be discussing. We should not be discussing this. At the end of the day, abortions was right until, those stupid ding dong men just want to come in and just be like, oh, you're all fired. We're taking over. And now look at us. We have to fight for our own rights. First of all, women's rights are human rights. So therefore, why are you trying to tell a woman that she cannot have an abortion? It's our human right. And I'm just fed up with it. But I'm just I'm ready for all them to go. We need to vote every single one of them out. I ain't trying to be funny. I would use the A word at this point, but you know what? I don't want to say it, but I'm just saying that is one of them. I ain't trying to be funny. Like that can happen too. But I'm just like, cause ain't nothing gonna change. Ain't nothing gonna change in this dang gone country. I mean, I'm not even gonna go into full detail, but I just know that I'm ready for every single one of them to get on out. We gotta take over. Cause this ain't it. I want every single one of them out. Vote every single one of them out. If you didn't do the midterm election, well dang. But we gotta get those people out. But for my next episode, I will speak on the complications that women face when they're pregnant. Because it's very important for people to educate themselves on the risk. Like being pregnant ain't no joke. I don't have kids, but I just know that crap ain't no joke. It's not a joke at all. So for my next episode, I most definitely will speak on that. Now I'm going to get into the Black History fact for today. So the Black History fact for today, I'll be talking about George Stinney Jr., the 14-year-old boy that was executed in Columbia, South Carolina, back in 1944. So on March the 24th, George Stinney Jr. and his sister, Amy Stinney, was playing when two young white girls, Betty June Binnicker, age 11, and Mary Emma Towns, age 7, walked by and asked them if they knew where some flowers were. Then, a couple hours later, the two young white girls did not make it home, so there was a search party that was organized to find the young white girls. Now, however, the two young white girls' bodies were found in a ditch and both of them suffered head injuries. Now, George Stanley Jr. was arrested and was interrogated for hours without his parents or an attorney. Now, the sheriff claimed that George Stanley Jr. confessed to the murders, even though there was no written statement. Also, law enforcement said that George Stanley Jr. confessed and said that he wanted to have sex with one of the girls. Even though, like I said, there is no proof of this statement. It wasn't written down or recorded or anything. And because of this, it was a white mob that was trying to find George Stinney Jr., but he was already in jail at this point, and his family were forced to leave town. Now, George Stinney Jr. trial took place on April the 24th with a all-white jury, and also his parents were not allowed in the courtroom. Now, the prosecution presented the testimony that they said they had of George Stinney Jr. Allegedly confessing to the crime. And it only took 10 minutes for the all white jury to finally make a decision and found George Stinney Jr. guilty for rape and murder. George Stinney Jr. was sentenced to death. And on June the 16th of 1944, George Stinney Jr. was executed in the electric chair. And it only took 83 days for this trial to convict him and also to electrocute him. This whole process only took 83 days. Now, the sad part about it is that in 2014, he was exonerated. So there's a South Carolina judge that held a 2-day hearing that included testimonies from George Stinney Jr.'s siblings. So the judge found that there was unfairness in the case and also the fact that there was lack of evidence to prove that George Stinney Jr. committed the crime. So that is all for today. And like I said earlier, for next episode, I'll be speaking on the complications that women have during a pregnancy. So make sure you watch out for that. And thank you all for listening to my podcast. And I hope you all have a lovely day.